Okay, so story time, literally. I used to, about 10 years ago, live with this Chihuahua, Vinny, and he was adopted. He had 1 1/3 ears, and he was 14. He was supposed to die immediately. He just passed away yesterday, which is like incredible. So long, happy life. But I write kids' books, and one of the books I wrote was sort of like an origin story about how he got to his adoption and whatever. And I was never able to publish it. I never really share these things, but I thought maybe today I would share this. And so I'm going to read it for you. If you want to hear it, this is Vinny, That's Not Your Bed. Oh, and I dare you to make it through without crying.
Vincent van Gogh was a world-renowned, and that's a fancy way of saying famous, post-impressionist French painter. His paintings can be seen in museums around the world. His story is a fascinating journey of love, pain, and artistic triumphs. That's not the story we'll be hearing today, though our story does have pain, love, and a fair bit of adventure. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. Our tale is about a Chihuahua named Vinny. Chihuahuas are tiny dogs that come from Mexico. An ancient race of people called the Aztecs believed Chihuahuas were given to them by aliens and that they had special healing powers. I can't tell you if Vinny is an alien or if he has Aztec healing powers, but he is definitely a special, out-of-this-world Chihuahua, and you will soon know why. Vinny stands roughly 5 inches tall and weighs just under 5 pounds, but in his head, he's a gigantic 4 feet tall and 250 pounds. In other words, he's a kitty cat that thinks he's a lion. He has a tan coat with rivers of white running through it. On the very tip-top of his head is a brown island surrounded by white fur. Now, Vinny has never painted a beautiful French garden or countryside like the famous French painter with whom he shares a first name. His artistry is hobbled, which is a word your grandmother might use to say something was limited. Not so much by lack of artistic ambition, but more because he's a dog and lacks thumbs and other crucial skills somewhat necessary to becoming a legendary artist. I say that somewhat because he's exactly the kind of dog to try to prove me wrong. He loves overcoming impossible odds. That said, he would probably enjoy napping in the afternoon sun in the countryside or a French garden quite a lot more than painting them. Vinny loved to nap. In fact, his favorite things in the whole wide world were napping while cuddling, dinner, snoring, and after school time when he would run circles around the living room table to celebrate his 2 brothers coming home before taking a nap. His brothers weren't dogs. They were human first and second graders named Joe and Jaime. At night, Vinny liked to kick off his slumber on Joe's bed, but when Joe started to roll around in his sleep, Vinny usually jumped off, grabbed a drink of water, and wound up climbing under Jaime's covers. He liked to nod off, cuddled under Jaime's chin. In the morning when Vinny's mother, also not a dog, woke them up for school, she always wondered how Jaime or Vinny could breathe and sleep packed in so tightly. But Jaime never seemed to mind at all. While the boys brushed their teeth and got dressed, Vinny usually made a bed out of the towels they left on the bathroom floor and took a quick pre-breakfast nap. At breakfast, Vinny inhaled his food and then usually made a nest out of one of his brother's shoes in hopes that he might keep them from going somewhere called school. Much to Vinny's disappointment, it never worked. Had Jaime and Joe known what Vinny was up to, they would have been disappointed too. Their mom never forgot the time that Vinny chewed up some shoes as a puppy. Every morning she shooed Vinny off the shoes, yelling, "Vinny, that's not your bed!" Vinny wasn't famous like certain French painters, but he was loved. He lived with his family in a small, happy house in Berwyn, Illinois, just outside Chicago. Vinny is bilingual, which is just a big word that means that he understands 2 languages. He understood English, but as a native of Mexico, his songs were often in Spanish. When his hermanos locos, which is a way of saying crazy brothers, as he liked to call them, left for school, it was the perfect time for a nap. Vinny had a particularly rusty knee that didn't seem to be getting better with age, but he still loved to hobble and curl up in his dad's suit. Vinny's dad, also not a Chihuahua, would lay that day's suit on the bed while he showered for work. Vinny couldn't always make the jump on the bed on account of his rusty knee, but on the days he could, he was treated to a wonderful snooze on some of the finest material he'd ever slept upon. These naps never lasted very long before his dad would run out of the bathroom yelling, "Vinny, that's not your bed!" He would frantically wave Vinny off the bed and then try his best with a lint roller to get Vinny's fur off the suit. Vinny was never upset about being kicked off the bed, and his dad never seemed to stay upset for long, or remember not to lay his suits on the bed before work. Vinny's late mornings and afternoons were usually spent sleeping on the couch next to his mom while she watched TV. Other days he slept in a patch of sunlight shining through a window somewhere in the house. Often these naps were interrupted by his mom shouting, "Vinnie, that's not your bed!" over the roar of the vacuum she was trying to use on the carpet where Vinnie was sleeping. The vacuum scared Vinnie more than anything else in the world. To escape its roar, he would run to the front door, stand on his tippy toes, and use his front paws to pull a few coats off the coat rack. Once the coats were on the floor, Vinnie determinedly burrowed his way underneath, got cozy, and promptly fell asleep. This usually positioned him perfectly if the mailman had a package to deliver. As a rule, Chihuahuas are very protective of their families, and Vinnie was no exception. Vinnie loved his family and would do anything to protect them. He didn't know what the mailman was up to, but he was sure it was no good. His pile of coats was the perfect place to launch a sneak attack against the mailman's pant leg, both surprising his mother and terrifying the mailman. Usually his mom had to pull him off the mailman while apologizing profusely, which means a whole lot, and then, seeing the coats on the floor, scolding him, saying, "Vinnie, that's not your bed." After that, Vinnie was generally sent outside, and if it wasn't winter, he would find a patch of sunlight and nap in the grass until his hermanos locos came home from school. That was one of his favorite moments in the day. On this day, since it was winter, Vinnie would sleep under the kitchen table next to the big, warm radiator and wait for his humans to get home from school. After school, Vinnie would sleep on his brother's backpacks and occasionally try to help them with their homework. Vinnie couldn't tell his pluses from his minus signs, but he was a great excuse to take a break from even the worst subjects, like math. If Vinnie was lucky, those breaks meant that Jaime would say, "Vinnie, that's not your bed," and lift him out of the backpack to get a treat, cuddle, or play a game of fetch. While Vinnie's mom made dinner, Vinnie liked to curl up in front of the stove. It was warm, and it was the best place to lay and wait in case something delicious dropped to the floor. Vinnie knew he wasn't supposed to eat things that dropped, but somehow he couldn't help himself. Sometimes it worked out well, and a juicy piece of steak or chicken landed in his lap. Other times, something boring and yucky like spinach hit the floor, and Vinnie just kept on sleeping. As she rushed back and forth around the kitchen, Vinnie's mom usually managed to trip over Vinnie somehow, and he knew when he heard her holler, "Vinnie, that's not your bed!" that it was time to relocate his nap to some other bed. After dinner, Vinnie's mom went to work at the hospital. She made Joe and Jaime promise to do their homework and not watch TV. This was Vinnie's favorite part of the day because it meant he got to lay on the couch, nap, and eat popcorn while his brothers went ahead and watched TV anyway. Vinnie liked to burrow under the blankets on the couch until he disappeared entirely. He was so small you couldn't even tell he was in the blanket pile, and you certainly wouldn't assume that any living creature could breathe under such a pile if it was indeed inside, which it was. To Vinnie, it was heaven. Curled up between the mess of his brother's tangled feet and legs was as good as it got. Vinnie's dad usually got home from work a few hours later. Joe and Jaime were perfect at shutting off the TV and bolting to their rooms as fast as possible. By the time their dad walked in, they looked as if they were hard at work on book reports or math problems, and their dad always seemed proud of them for being so responsible. Vinnie never said a word. Tired from work, Vinnie's dad would microwave leftover dinner and plop down on the blanket-covered couch. You know, the one with a hidden chihuahua inside? This caused more than one plate of spilled casserole, as Vinnie yelped and squirmed toward freedom as his dad yelled, "Vinnie, that's not your bed!" His dad never stayed mad, and if something spilled, he usually let Vinnie have the honor of cleaning it up. With something delicious in his belly, Vinnie would instantly forget he'd been sat on. Tonight was different. Vinnie's dad seemed very upset. Vinnie tried to snuggle with him on the couch, but his dad just got up and went for a long walk and didn't even bring Vinnie. The next day, Vinnie's dad was home all day. He wasn't in a better mood, and his mom seemed upset too. Vinnie's dad was home the next day and the day after that too. Vinnie really liked having his dad home every day, but he could tell that his mom and dad weren't very happy. This went on for a few months before Vinnie's mom started to be home a lot more too. Vinnie thought this was great, but none of the rest of his family seemed to agree. It seemed to Vinnie like he was going to bed just a little bit hungrier each night, but he thought that maybe he was just imagining things. Most nights now, Jaime held him extra tight and even cried sometimes as he fell asleep getting Vinnie's coat wet. Vinnie didn't mind, he just slept even harder and snuggled Jaime as best as he knew how. One day, Vinnie's parents brought home some boxes and started packing things inside them. Joe and Jaime helped. Soon, most of Vinnie's favorite beds were packed away. He had trouble finding a great spot for a nap, but did catch a wink or two on a pile of bubble wrap. His brothers were at school when Vinnie's dad scooped him up and whispered, "Vinnie, that's not your bed." He used Vinnie's bubble wrap mattress on a box of dishes. Later that day, Vinnie's dad dressed him in a walking sweater and put him in the front seat of the car. Vinnie assumed that they were going to the dog park. They hadn't been for a while, and Vinnie was so excited that he took a power nap to prepare in the car seat as they drove. There was a St. Bernard that was always at the dog park, and he'd need to have all his energy to bark at it. When he woke up, his dad was unbuckling his collar. It felt good to be free. Vinnie yawned, and his dad opened the car door. It wasn't the dog park. Vinnie's dad gave him a hug and said sadly, "Vinnie, this isn't your bed." Vinnie got the hint and hopped out of the car. He stretched his legs and walked away from the car and into the park. He stopped to wait and turned around to look for his dad, but the car was gone and his dad was nowhere to be seen. Vinnie sat down and decided to wait. There was a nice patch of grass next to a tree. Luckily, it was a warmer January than usual, and with his sweater on, Vinnie was able to take a nice nap under the tree while he waited. He awoke with a start to the sound of a nasty group of geese squawking at him. "That's not your bed! That's not your bed!" they hissed. Vinnie skedaddled, which is a funny way to say that he ran away. It was getting pretty dark, and he decided that maybe he would go look for his dad. He wandered through the park, but didn't see anything he recognized. This didn't even smell a bit like his dog park or his walking park. Where was he? Vinnie liked to make up songs to comfort himself, and he definitely needed a song now. Just like Thoughts, his songs are often in Spanish. He sang. Okay, I don't really have a melody for any of these songs, but, you just make it up when you sing it to the kids. So it goes, Donde estoy es un misterio. Necesito pistas para resolver el caso. Porque donde estoy, no sé, no sé. Porque donde estoy, no sé, no sé. It means, where am I? It's a mystery. I need clues to solve the case. Why, oh, why? Where am I? I don't know. I don't know. Why, oh, why? Where am I? I don't know. I don't know. Vinnie walked out of the park on 3 legs. What a time for his bum knee to be acting up. It really didn't do well in the cold. Vinnie wanted to find his dad quickly and get home in time for popcorn and TV. He seemed to be somewhere near downtown, and mostly because he was getting extra hungry, decided to follow his nose. Turning a corner, Vinnie found an alley with a delicious smell. The smell was coming from a Chinese restaurant. Behind the restaurant, there was a vent blowing warm, delicious air out into the cold night. Vinnie sniffed the air. He thought he spotted a blanket next to a dumpster nearby and went to grab it. It turned out the blanket was just newspaper, but underneath the newspaper was a bag of somewhat stale, half-eaten donuts. Donuts were Vinnie's favorite food in the entire world. Vinnie ate many of the donuts. Donuts were Vinnie's favorite food in the entire world. Vinnie ate as many of the donuts as he could and dragged the rest along with the newspaper back to the Chinese restaurant. The sun was setting and Vinnie pulled the newspaper over his head and went to sleep under the warm vent, shaking a bit from the cold The sun was setting and Vinnie pulled the newspaper over his head and went to sleep under the warm vent, shaking a bit from the cold and a bit because he was scared. Being scared always made him sleepy. As he drifted to sleep, he sang, Buñuelos deliciosos en mi estómago, oh, 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 tan sabroso, estos postres, hey, hey, hey. Basically means donuts in my tummy, oh, oh, oh. They were really good, desserts, hey, hey, hey. A horrible hissing surprised Vinnie, and he pushed his head out from underneath the newspaper to see what the racket was. 3 feral black cats stared back and hissed, "That's not your bed," at Vinnie. He was still very tired and half asleep, but more than a bit scared. He was lost, cold, and had never seen a cat before. He growled in reply. No one was taking his bed or his donuts without a fight. But as Vinnie was only the size of a small toy and lacked any kind of relevant experience, which here means that he'd never been in a fight, he was not the best fighter. One cat stepped forward and swatted him with his paw. Vinnie yelped and ran. He didn't look back. It's a good thing because he would have been terribly sad to see all his donuts eaten by mean cats and his newspaper bed blowing away in the night breeze. Superstitious people consider black cats to be a harbinger, which means a sign or omen of bad luck. They think that things like breaking a mirror or spilling the salt can determine whether you have good or bad luck in the future. Schoolyard rhymes like step on a crack, break your mother's back are a playful way to make a game out of superstitions. Still, some people take superstitions very seriously, and they would think what happened to Vinnie next was proof that superstitions were real. You see, it may seem like Vinnie's luck was already bad, but it was going to get a bit worse before it has a chance of improving. I tell you that just so you're prepared and so you can take a moment and think about whether you think that those mean, donut-thieving black cats had anything to do with Vinnie's worsening luck or not. It was now pretty late. The sky was dark and the tall street lamps lit the sidewalk in pools of yellowish light. Vinnie was getting pretty cold. He tried to smell for familiar smells and maybe follow a scent back home. That didn't work. He just managed to walk in a circle and found himself back at the alley with the black cats. He stepped off the sidewalk and immediately 2 bright lights shined at him. There was a screeching noise and a loud honking. Vinnie ran faster, bending his bum knee and running on 3 legs, getting to the opposite sidewalk just in time. On the other side of the street was another alley, and Vinnie cautiously peeked down it. The coast seemed clear, and Vinnie trotted towards an inviting cardboard box laying on its side. His first mistake was poking his head inside. A much bigger than Vinnie-sized black mutt came tearing out of the box and barked at Vinnie. Arrgh! Remember that while Vinnie was tiny, he imagined himself to be quite large and ferocious. Vinnie had never seen cats before tonight, but he had seen dogs, and he never backed down. Vinnie growled and bared his teeth. He snapped at the other dog, trying to scare it away. It snapped back and caught Vinnie's ear in its mouth. Vinnie pulled away and felt his ear tear. He shrieked and howled in pain. He skedaddled as fast as he could on 3 legs. His ear was on fire. Back out on the street, Vinnie kept whining and eventually crawled under a car parked on the street. He made a nest with his back against the wheel on one side and the curb on the other. It was cold and his ear throbbed in pain. He whimpered for a while and tried to find a way to lick the wound, eventually gave up, and in spite of everything, fell asleep after making a little song to make himself feel better. It went, Estoy perdido esta noche, pues mi cama es un coche. I'm lost tonight, so my bed is a car. Now, if you've never heard a Chihuahua's howl, I hope you never have to. It went, Estoy perdido esta noche, pues mi cama es un coche. Which means I am lost tonight, so my bed is a car. Now, if you've never heard a Chihuahua's howl, I hope you never have to. It is something else. Now, if you've never heard a Chihuahua's howl, Estoy perdido esta noche, pues mi cama es un coche. I am lost tonight, so my bed is a car. That's what that means. Now, if you've never heard a Chihuahua's howl, I hope you never have to. It is something else Chihuahuas share with humans and almost sounds a lot like a human baby's cry. Vinnie's cry was mistaken for a baby's, and it definitely helped him escape the cold. Concerned neighbors heard the cry and called the police. Vinnie was dreaming of napping in front of the stove and fajitas falling to the floor when he was shaken awake by a policewoman who said, Senor Chihuahua, that's not your bed. Vinnie yawned and whimpered slightly as she picked him up and carried him to her police car. He was too worn out to growl at all. He fell asleep on her jacket during the ride and was gently awakened by a back rub and the policewoman saying, That's not your bed either, little guy. She carried him into a building with a steel table and bright fluorescent lights everywhere. Another lady in a white coat put some stingy stuff on Vinnie's injured ear, and he growled at her. But she gave him a treat, and his ear started to not hurt, so he decided she was a friend. The policewoman rubbed Vinnie's back as the white coat lady put bandages on the third of an ear he had left. Vinnie figured his dad would probably come get him, and he slept patiently in the cage that the lady in the white coat set him in. There were dogs in cages everywhere. They howled and barked, but Vinnie just slept. Days and weeks passed. People came and looked at Vinnie, but none of them were his dad or his brothers. Eventually, they moved Vinnie to another shelter with another cage. This one had more dogs and more people coming. One day, an elderly couple took Vinnie for a walk and played with him a bit, but they ended up taking home a little Yorkie a few cages down from Vinnie. Vinnie was okay with that. He was sure his family was coming. But Vinnie's family wasn't coming, and he was running out of time. As an old dog with a bum knee and 1 1/3 ears, he was not the top choice for people adopting dogs. Dog shelters can only hold so many dogs and eventually have to make room for new arrivals. Vinnie didn't know this, or he would have been scared, and that would have made him sleepy. Early one Saturday morning, a girl and her dad came into the shelter looking for dogs. They played with a Bichon and a Golden Retriever. They played with a Dachshund and a Jack Russell Terrier. Her dad said the Jack Russell looked just like the RCA dog. She asked, "What's an RCA?" Her dad laughed and they moved on. Eventually, the girl wandered over and peeked in Vinnie's cage. "Dad," she asked, tapping on the cage, "what about this one?" Vinnie kept on sleeping. Her dad took a look in the cage and said, "I think this guy's a little too old. He's only got 1 ear." "You're wrong, Dad. He's got 1 1/3 ears. That's the perfect number. I don't want a dog with 2 ears." A few minutes later, Vinnie was in another room with just the girl and her dad. The girl tossed a toy towards Vinnie, but he wasn't sure yet if he wanted to play. He growled when she tried to pet him, but she didn't even flinch. She scratched his back and it felt wonderful. No one had done that in months. Vinnie moved closer and climbed into her lap. "My name's Olivia," the girl whispered. Vinnie yawned and Olivia carefully ran her hand across the edge of his missing ear. It was extremely soothing and he quickly fell asleep. Still thinking Vinnie was a little too old, Olivia's dad made her look at a silky terrier puppy. After a few minutes of play, Olivia shook her head. She walked back to Vinnie's cage, where he was already fast asleep, and tapped on the bars. "Hey," she said, "wake up. That's not your bed." After a little bit of paperwork, Vinnie had been adopted, and Olivia stashed him inside a pink dog purse that was slung over her arm. Vinnie looked out for a while, but eventually went to sleep. Since Vinnie didn't have his collar on when the policewoman found him, no one at the shelters really knew his name. For all they know, it could have been Roger or Caballero or Sam or Chi-Chi or even something funny like Edward Snorton. The shelter had given him the name Charlie temporarily, but Vinnie didn't really like it. He knew his name was Vinnie. Why didn't anyone else? But Olivia knew. Somehow she knew. In the car on the way home, Olivia's dad asked what she was going to name her new Chihuahua. Olivia thought for a moment. Today was Saturday, and Saturdays were Olivia's favorite day of the week. Saturdays were daddy-daughter day, and that meant she got to spend the whole day with her dad. Every day lately had been a daddy-daughter day of sorts, but Olivia still loved Saturdays the most. Today they'd gotten up early and had pancakes, Olivia's favorite food. After that, they went to the museums. Olivia learned about space and ate astronaut ice cream. She learned about baby chicks hatching and saw hundreds of them incubating under heat lamps. She controlled the weather and made her own tornado. In another museum, she had seen an exhibit which taught her about different styles of painting. She saw paintings by Georges Seurat, who used tiny dots of paint to create his paintings. This style of painting is called pointillism. She learned about Claude Monet and other Impressionist painters who created very realistic and well-lit paintings of ordinary objects. Olivia found Impressionism a little boring compared with Seurat's pointillism. But her favorite part of the day was learning about the world-renowned post-impressionist painter Vincent van Gogh, who painted with more intense colors and swirling brushstrokes than Monet or Seurat. Olivia liked the raw intensity of his paintings, but found his life story even more fascinating. Van Gogh had an illness in his mind, but had still managed to paint beautiful art. His paintings felt honest and real to Olivia in a way that other painters' works had not. Olivia had gasped when the tour guide explained that Van Gogh had lost most of his own ear in a fit of madness. Olivia found that terrifying, but extremely interesting. Van Gogh, she had decided earlier, was her favorite artist. After the museum, her dad had promised to get her a dog. He was imagining a puppy of some kind, but Olivia had insisted they adopt a dog that lost its family. That is how she found herself in the car with a Chihuahua on her lap in the need of a name. "I'm going to call him Vincent van Gogh," Olivia told her dad matter-of-factly. "He only has 1 1/3 ears, and I think he has an artist's soul." "He seems more like a professional nap taker," laughed her dad. "He's missing an ear and still running around on 3 legs. You don't get scars from sleeping all the time, Dad," Olivia scolded. "We're going to have plenty of adventures." She was right, too. They did have plenty of adventures. When they got home, Olivia took Vinnie for a walk and showed him his new neighborhood. He liked it a lot. There were plenty of trees. There was a dog park around the corner. At first, Vinnie wasn't sure if he would like it as much as his old one. However, inside the park was a giant Great Dane that Vinnie very much enjoyed growling at. It was no St. Bernard, but Vinnie still enjoyed showing that he was the boss. When they got home, Vinnie, Olivia, and her dad ate dinner, and Vinnie inhaled his food. Then he fell asleep on the floor in front of the stove, which was still warm. Vinnie hadn't felt so cozy in months. When it was time to do dishes, Olivia's dad nearly tripped over Vinnie. Vinnie was not surprised to be shooed out of the kitchen by the sound of him yelling, "Vinnie, that's not your bed." Vinnie and Olivia scurried upstairs. Olivia worked on finishing some homework, and Vinnie found a way to curl up inside her backpack and fall asleep. A little while later, her dad came upstairs and said, "I think it's almost bedtime, honey." Olivia lifted Vinnie out of her backpack so gently he didn't wake up. Shaking her head and smiling, she giggled quietly. "Vinnie, that's not your bed." Then she packed up her school books and went to brush her teeth. While she was gone, Vinnie woke up and got a little scared when he realized he was alone. As you know, being scared always makes Vinnie a little sleepy, as did most things. He crawled under the bed and shut his eyes. Olivia came back and couldn't find Vinnie. She called for him, but he was not used to her voice calling him and kept sleeping. "Dad, I can't find Vinnie!" Olivia yelled in a panic. Her dad rushed back. They looked by Olivia's shoes in the back hall, on her backpack, in the closet with all her dad's suits, by the windows, under the coat rack, in front of the stove, and inside the blanket pile on the couch. Vinnie was lost. Olivia was getting very worried, but then she heard a gentle snoring coming from under the bed. She peeked underneath and saw her sleeping Chihuahua. Carefully, she pulled Vinnie out and held him close. "Vinnie," she explained as he opened his eyes and yawned, "that's not your bed." Olivia climbed into her bed and let her dad tuck both of them in. Vinnie's head rested right underneath Olivia's chin, just like he'd done with Jaime. She held him super extra mega tight and whispered, "Vinnie, this is your bed now, forever and ever and ever, no matter what, okay?" Vinnie yawned and closed his eyes. He always got very sleepy when he had a new bed. Olivia's dad ran his fingers through her hair, pulling it back, and kissed her gently on the forehead. "Good night, my little Olivia," he said. "Good night, my giant dad," she said. "Want to say good night to Mom tonight?" "Yeah, I want her to meet Vinnie." Olivia yawned. "Okay, honey, I think she would like that." Vinnie opened an eye. He didn't see Olivia's mom anywhere, but he liked meeting people, and he loved his last mom. Olivia and her dad closed their eyes and said a short prayer. "Hi, Momby," Olivia said afterwards. That was what she called her mom for as long as she could remember. "You missed a really fun daddy-daughter day today. We went to the museum, and I ate astronaut ice cream. Dad didn't even get any in his beard like he does with regular ice cream, so I guess it's okay that you weren't there to wipe it out. But we still missed you." Then we learned about this guy Surratt, who painted pictures with little dots. But I think you would have agreed with me that the guy who cut off his own ear had a better backstory and was a cooler painter. I think he's my favorite painter now, and guess what, Mom? Now he's a dog. Well, kinda. Mom, I would like to introduce Vincent van Gogh, a chihuahua of many adventures past and many adventures to come. Olivia gently petted Vinnie, but he still did not see his new mom. "Anyway," Olivia continued, "we missed you today, Mom. I hope you like Mr. Van Gogh. Maybe you can say hi to the painter Van Gogh for me. Hopefully I'll see you in Dreamland. Maybe. Good night, Mom. I love you." Olivia's dad had tears in his eyes, and her dad silently mouthed, "I love you too." He kissed Olivia goodnight, and turning off the light, promised to see her in the morning. "I love you, Dad. I love you too." In the dark, a few final tears drizzled down Olivia's cheeks, and Vinnie licked them. Olivia giggled. She hugged him extra tight. "Vinnie, I bet you had a nice family before, and I bet they miss you. Do you want to say anything to them, wherever they are?" Vinnie, of course, was silent, but he did think back to all the wonderful times he had with Joe, Jaime, his old mom, and his old dad. He remembered them fondly and hoped they were all okay and happy. "Vinnie's family," Olivia announced. "Vinnie loves you and misses you. He has a forever home now, and he's loved. I promise I will take good care of him for you." "Vinnie," she said, "we're each other's family now. My mom is in heaven, and we don't know where your family is. You and me and Dad. I promise that I will always love you, and you can always sleep inside a warm bed. This isn't your bed. This isn't my bed. It'll be our bed, okay? And I get kind of sad sometimes when I go to sleep, and I think I might want to hold you extra tight if that's okay." Vinnie sighed slightly. It was fine with him. He was finally home again, in his bed, their bed. He closed his eyes and felt Olivia drift into sleep as her gentle tears slowly stopped. Maybe Vinnie really did have ancient Aztec healing powers of some kind. To help him fall asleep, he sang, "Esta es mi cama, esta es mi cama, me encanta esta chica y ella me ama, me encanta esta chica y ella me ama." That means, this is my bed, I love this girl and she loves me, I love this girl and she loves me. Eventually, Vinnie nodded off and had what, if he could have talked, he would have described as his best nap ever. This was definitely his bed. Epilogue, which means a fun little bit of story that happens after it's all over. In the morning, Olivia got up early for school, and after she left, Vinnie finally met her other pet, Larry David. Vinnie was curled up in his bed for a post-breakfast snooze. It was delightful. He was just closing his eyes when he felt something land on the bed next to him. He opened his eyes, and a curious and strange-looking cat was sniffing him. Vinnie did not have a fondness for cats after the black cats he met in the alley, and this cat was no exception. The cat looked a bit like an alien and had no hair anywhere on its body. It was pink with gray splotches. Vinnie wasted absolutely no time. He sprung to his feet, barking and growling, "Larry, that's not your bed!"